Now then, so today we got another Gwent Academy video. If you've watched my content before, you probably know a bit about who I am. If you haven't, name's Zanari, and I'm typically a top 500 player, and have a very long history of playing TCGs and that kind of thing, so quite familiar with it. And the idea of these videos is there's a lot out there for like beginner kind of content to like pick up the game, learn the ropes, but there's not too much in the way of stuff for sort of intermediate players who are looking to go from like low pro rank or like quite high ranks, so like rank 5 above, and try and push it a bit further. So these videos are kind of covering topics like that, and yeah, try and pass on some knowledge and hopefully help you out. And as always with these kind of things, if there's sort of anything I neglect to mention that you can think of on the topic, um, please put in the comments, because then anyone else who comes along can see those, get some extra tips, helps out everybody. And so for this video, we're going to look at how you can be most efficient at ranking up and sort of tips for doing it as quickly and efficiently as possible, basically. I'm going to break this video down into a couple of sections because I think there's tips that will be more important at the sort of rank section, and then ones that are more important for pro rank. So we'll start on like the rank stuff and then talk about the pro rank stuff. So I'll just quickly cover, if you're sort of below rank 5, I think is probably the best way to put it, like low ranks. I think the best way for you to rank up quickly is to focus on one deck. Just pick a deck you like. Obviously, this will be more effective if you pick a sort of meta deck that has been tried and tested and everybody knows is pretty strong. But you can also do this with your own, because typically at lower ranks, it's more about player skill than it is deck ability, because people make mistakes. If you're playing at a higher level, typically you can capitalize on that, even if your deck is worse. So you typically want to be really understanding your deck inside and out, and all of this will come from experience. You want to know like what your deck's win condition is, what your overall plan is, so your macro game plan. Like, do you want a short round 3? Do you want to be bleeding your opponent? Do you want a long round 3? Do you need a specific combo ready? So all those kind of things you want to be ingrained in the back of your mind every time you play, so you understand how the deck works, and you can go into every game quite confident that you can use it effectively. And this is where it gets into kind of what I was talking about with meta decks. Obviously, with decks that are tried and tested, there's plenty of content out there from content creators and on like streams and things like that, where you can watch them using those decks, and people at high levels can explain exactly how to do it. A bit more difficult to do if it's a deck you built for yourself, because you kind of have to figure it out for yourself. But I think that's basically the advice I can give, is really learn a deck inside and out. Because if you're switching from deck to deck to deck, I do it myself, where you get in the mindset of, say, you're playing a deck that really wants a short round, and you start bleeding in round 2 just automatically because you're used to it, when it's really not what you should be doing with that deck. So really knowing your deck inside and out is the best way to rank up by far, absolutely by far. And now we'll just talk about the sort of the last little bit before pro rank. So I'd say like rank 5 to rank 1. Very similar to what I was talking about with low ranks. However, the problem at these sort of ranks is people are already very good, and typically you are going to need a meta deck to rank up. So I would recommend using a strong meta deck and doing what I've said before. Try and learn it inside and out. And of course, as I sort of mentioned, you will have the benefit of having access to a lot of resources online of people explaining how to use these different decks. I would also recommend trying to pick up decks that are strong and also like quite quick to pick up. So at the moment, things like Reckless Flurry and Nature's Gift are two very solid choices, because there's it's quite an obvious game plan. There's not too many decisions to make, and so it's very quick for you to pick it up and be playing it to a high level. Whereas something like, I personally think something like Assimilate, Alumni to an extent, both of those kind of decks, there's some decision making aspects that might take you a while to pick up, which is fine if you want to learn the deck, but obviously if we're talking about the most efficient things, you want a deck you can pick up that's strong, and you'll be playing to a high level very quickly. So, as I say, I would recommend the sort of more intuitive kind of decks. And now we'll go into the pro rank stuff, which is really the meat of it all. The last thing I will say on the pre-pro rank kind of stuff is remember to go in your settings and accept the pro rank regulations. It's a really weird thing. But basically, if you to go into pro rank, if you've never been up, once you've completed the mosaic for rank 1, you then, when you win, you should go into pro rank. However, you have to go in your settings, and there's a little box where you click your like accept the pro rank regulations, and that's the thing you have to click to get into pro rank. Really weird that the game doesn't tell you. It caught me out the first time I was going to go up. Sort of completed it and didn't get in, didn't know why, but yeah, weird thing to keep in mind. And now we'll move on to the pro rank stuff. Now we'll talk about the pro rank kind of stuff, which is really the meat of it all, because with the lower ranks, Gwent has a quite forgiving system for ranking up. So because you only need sort of 6 wins aggregate to go up a rank, it doesn't matter too much if you lose a lot. Obviously, it's going to slow down your progression if you're losing a lot, but it's very forgiving, and so you can steadily get up. But it's pro rank that sort of takes off those almost like training wheels, because if you go on a 20 loss streak, your MMR is going to get down, and if you want to get your MMR up, you're going to have to push it up. So this is kind of where it matters if you want to rank up. So the things I'm going to talk about here are things that either I know I should be doing and I don't because I'm very impulsive, and I also just kind of mess about, which I really shouldn't do. And also the things that I've personally used myself to get some of the top finishes I managed to get. So I think there's a lot of little things. A lot of the things I've already talked about with the pre-pro rank kind of stuff is very important. You know, picking up a deck and learning it inside and out, knowing your game plan going into it, not just going in blind and kind of making guesses. Knowing what you should be doing will help you out massively. But there's 2 sort of larger scale things you can do, almost like outside of the game, to really make you ranking up quite efficient and very fast. So, the first one you can do basically at any time is countering the meta. So you'll all be aware that when you go on, and this will fluctuate basically day to day, there will be a large concentration of people playing specific decks, and this is influenced by a lot of things. Maybe a big streamer's picked up a deck and everyone's seeing it's kind of good and everyone's trying it out, or it's like a flavor of the month kind of thing, or just generally something solid. So, for example, in the last couple of weeks, we've kind of seen Double Cross has been played a lot, Peltulis has been played a lot. That became quite flavor of the month the last few days. Reckless Flurry and Delegate Druids, just off the top of my head, have all kind of been very prevalent on the ladder. So you want to stay aware of these kind of things. And you'll notice it yourself, just when you go into games, try and be aware of what you're coming up against quite regularly. And so what you want to be doing is countering that meta. So, for example, if Keltulis is everywhere, you want to be playing a deck that is going to have a very strong matchup against Keltulis. If Reckless Flurry is everywhere, deck with a very strong matchup against Reckless Flurry, and so on and so on. And the general idea here is, sure, you're going to search for some games and not come up against the deck you built your deck to counter, but say if 70% of your games are against this very common deck, you have a solid matchup against it, you're going to have a better win rate than if you're playing against completely random decks. So you kind of instantly boost your win rate just by almost guaranteeing good matchups for yourself. This is kind of something I've personally done, and it has done absolute wonders for me. And it is quite intensive, sort of being aware of what's on the ladder, but it really pays off. For example, one season I'd sort of neglected and hadn't really been playing too much, but needed to get up into pro rank, and I was aware that on the last day, people were probably going to be playing something strong and easy to use, and at the time that was Skellige Warriors, so I basically played Keltullis all day, because Keltullis is close to an auto-win matchup against Skellige Warriors, and I managed to get about 150 MMR on monsters just in that day, and that was well enough to carry me up. And it's very, very effective. As I say, sure, there's going to be some games where you don't come up against this deck you expect, but giving yourself good matchups results in nothing but a good win rate. And the last thing I will sort of say on that topic is you can't kind of do this one day and then be like, right, I now know what everyone's playing, we'll just stick with it. You have to be aware, and you need to very quickly adapt as the meta starts to change. So all of a sudden, if you've been playing decks that are good against Keltullis and people stop playing Keltullis, you need to be adjusting to that, and you need to be aware of what everyone's switching to. As I say, it requires a lot of keeping track of things. For example, on the Gwent website, you can log into your account and you can see your match history. So that's usually a good one. You can look at the last 10 games or all your games that day, anything like that. And sort of see what you've been coming up against to plan ahead. Now, we'll talk about the second thing, which is something I personally don't do because I both make content for the game and have the impulse control to do it. But it's timing when you do your climb on the ladder. So it's kind of no coincidence that some of the top players wait until the end of the season to play the games. And this is quite like an intuitive thing when you think about it. So at the start of the season, say you finish top 500, every single top 500 player is going to be at 2400 MMR. So you play one of your games, you're going to be coming up against the top 500 players in the world every single game. However, if you were to play at 2400 MMR right at the end of the season, nearly all of those players are going to be people who've just got into pro rank, or players who are at the skill level of 2400 MMR. Basically because over the season, top players are just going to naturally rise up. You're not going to be playing them at lower MMR kind of games. And so what this kind of means is playing later in the season, you're going to have a much better chance because the average skill distribution is a lot more where it should be, instead of the bottom end being packed with very high level players. High level players are now high up, so you can actually climb a lot faster. This obviously requires impulse control, because what I'm basically saying to you is don't play ranked the first 3 weeks or so. So if you're like me and you don't like playing casuals, you kind of have to make a decision on this one. But that's my advice to you. It is the most effective way to do it, because you're just guaranteeing you're going to get, on average, worse opponents the later into the season you leave it. And this will obviously take a bit of forward planning, for example, because if you're wanting to do this, you're going to need to play at least 100 games to get, 4 factions with, you need to play 25 games with each, and that's a lot of games to play. So this is something you have to consider yourself. You basically need to have time to play 100 games. If you have the time to play 30 games a day, very easy for you. You can literally leave it to the last 4 days and you're fine. But the majority of us really don't have that time. So if you can only play 5 games, 5 games a day, for example, you can basically be confident you can leave it to the last 20 days of the season. And that's kind of it for the two main ones. As some like kind of resources, um, here are 4 decks that I personally think are kind of good choices right now to play on the ladder because they're solid, they perform well, they're easy to pick up, and are sort of tried and tested. So that's Reckless Flurry, Nature's Gift, Assimilate, and Alumni. Um, Reckless Flurry is just a solid mid-range deck and performs very, very well. I mean, you will have come up against it because it's been very, very, very popular for the last like couple of months, to be honest. Nature's Gift, another one that's just super solid. It's really just a combination of a lot of solid cards that perform very, very well. You have nice little combos with Simless, and the addition of Harvest has really, really helped out. It was already a solid deck, and now Harvest is just very, very good. Assimilate is just kind of that jack of all trades because it can deal with basically any matchup, because it can basically adapt to whatever your opponent's doing. You know, they're playing Alumni, you can steal their Alumni stuff and play Alumni of your own. If you're against Scoia'tael, you can take Sorcerers, which can then generate more spells for more Assimilate value, and so on and so on and so on. Gets kind of ridiculous. And yeah, it just kind of very, very flexible deck. It is one that I personally think does require a bit of practice for you to figure out, because it's quite, there's a lot of decision making involved. A lot of decision making because you have to really assess which cards are more important. And it's not as cut and dry as something like Flurry, for example, where the cards are just playing for a set value, and you kind of know how that's going to turn out. And then the last one's Alumni, which is very, very strong. I think people have wised up to it quite a bit, so it's not going to perform as well as it used to, but it's still very, very good. Because it's close to impossible, unless you have a very, very control heavy deck to actually stop the Alumni generating enough points. Generally, round 1, you want to use your students to bump up those patience values, so you at least want to get them up to like 4 each. If you get one up to 3, kind of doesn't matter, because then you can use Shani to pull it back out. At the end of the turn, it will instantly tick up to 4, so your opponent can't do anything about that. And then your Alumni, kind of stupid, because even if you've only got both the students to 4, they're still playing for 8 each, and then you can Adalia, and you can casting contest, and use practice makes perfect, and all these kind of things to reuse that ability. And obviously, if you can get those patience values even higher, then they become kind of stupid, because you could get them up to, say, deal 10 damage or boost by 10, and then the 14-point cards for 6. That gets kind of stupid. So I will leave it there. As I sort of say, there are a lot of little things for laddering that can help, but I definitely think I've covered the main things. I think if you focus on these kind of things, you will see an improvement in your win rate 100%. And you can hold me to that one. If there's anything I haven't covered here that you may be a bit unsure about or anything, don't hesitate to ask comments. As I say, we can kind of use this as a video for all your questions, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have, because play the game a little bit. I think I know a thing or two. So we'll leave it there, and my next video will be on Sunday. So see you there.